is Tyler Lockett of the Seattle Seahawks, and you're listening to the Full 10 Yards podcast.
Hey, we're rolling. We drive all game long. Stay tuned, man. We got something special for y'all today.
You're listening to the Full 10 Yards podcast.
To the 10, right to the 5, scooting in for the score. Touchdown.
Yeah!
Yes, welcome in, everyone. It's that bittersweet week where the big game is upon us, but also the end of the season, unfortunately, is too. But let's look forward with anticipation, fellas. We've got the biggest game of the season to look forward to, so it's all good tonight. Plenty of content to get into. We're going to have plenty of the lads from the Full 10 Yards family joining us throughout the course of the evening also. But we start the show with the regular Monday crew. Let's welcome the boys in. Tim, how are we, matey?
Happy cliche week, everyone.
Happy cliche week indeed, mate. Superb owl week, as you lovely put the tweet out earlier, mate. I was liking some of those owl-based playing.
I can't believe I didn't get Tawny Romo. How did I not get Tawny Romo? I put bloody Antonio Brown, for Christ's sake, and I didn't get Tawny Romo.
Kiki Hootie's my favourite so far, I've got to say. I'm liking a bit of Kiki Hootie. Kieran, welcome you in, buddy. How are you, mate?
Oh, it feels weird. There's Super Bowl weekend and the Patriots aren't in it. I feel a bit lost.
I know, we're all delighted, mate. I've got to be honest. You're going to get no sympathy from any of us three. I'll be absolutely honest with you, mate. We are all thrilled at that being the case. And, of course, Mr. Retro with some retro Super Bowl merchandise behind him. Lawrence, how are you, buddy?
Pretty good. I just got to say, I almost lost full bladder control last night when I was watching the Pro Bowl Madden game. And there's Snoop Dogg doing commentary, and Keyshawn Johnson tries to field a kick return, fumbles the ball, and then Snoop Dogg's going, Neal, Shaquille O'Neal, Tatum O'Neal, Ryan O'Neal, Leslie O'Neal, Neil Diamond. So Snoop Doggy Dogg saying Neil Diamond was just honestly one of the funniest things that I've heard in a long, long time. And just one other little side note, I've just had an email in the last half an hour directly from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers trying to sell me a Super Bowl ticket, $5,738.50. And I get a ticket, a virtual experience with some NFL legends, and a commemorative Bucks gift. So there you go, for just $5,738.
Not bad at all, mate. If only we could fly, eh? If only we could fly. Yeah, the Pro Bowl. If the Pro Bowl did anything this year, fellas, I think he probably highlighted how good the normal Pro Bowl actually is, because, good Lord, that was awful last night. 32-12 to the NFC, if anybody remotely cares.
There were two highlights. There were two highlights for me. One, Marshawn Lynch broke his chair when he intercepted a pass or something like that. And then the other one was when Nick Hopkins on the game caught a pass. And then I think it was Marshawn Lynch said, "Oh, hey, Deshaun, there's your boy at it again." Brilliant.
If as someone who has hundreds of hours in every single Madden still sucks. Madden still sucks.
Yeah, it does indeed. It does indeed. Let's get on to real life football, though, fellas. And before we start flipping the switch to the Super Bowl, a couple of things just to catch up on. Obviously, we talked about Deshaun Watson there a little bit. He was one of the players participating in the virtual Pro Bowl. He's been in the news this week, as of the Texans hiring David Culley, the Ravens assistant, obviously the man that was on everybody's head coach in search lips, not. But interesting press conference. He's a Texan. He's going to be a Texan when talking about Deshaun Watson. Don't think Deshaun Watson necessarily got that memo, as obviously he has now officially requested his trade. There'll be plenty of time to talk about where he might end up, fellas, and what the price may be. We'll talk about that in subsequent weeks. But obviously there is some actual real life news, not rumours, in terms of a quarterback trade, and a big one that went down over the course of the weekend. We are, of course, talking about Matthew Stafford, traded from the Detroit Lions, where he himself had requested a trade, going across to the LA Rams. The Rams giving up a fair bit, it would seem, from the outside looking in, giving away multiple first rounders, a third rounder, and of course Jared Goff, who in theory becomes the Lions quarterback. We'll wait and see how that plays out, or whether he actually ever does play a game for the Lions. But Lawrence, why do you think that potentially the Lions have won this trade, if indeed we can call a winner at this early stage?
Okay, well, it's clear, let's be absolutely honest, in terms of the immediate talent exchange, Matthew Stafford is a superior passer to Jared Goff. We know that. There's no point arguing that. But for me, the long-term implications favour the Lions. They've acquired a quarterback. Let's before we put full hate onto Jared Goff, let's just have a little look at a couple of things that he has done. He has played in a Super Bowl. Yes, he was goddamn awful, but he's played in a Super Bowl, so he's got that experience. The Rams themselves will not have a first-round pick until 2024, and they've only had one since 2016, so that's just insanity. Goff actually had more completions and more yards per game than Stafford did in 2020, and he would have had more yards, but Goff only played 15 games. In 12 seasons, Matthew Stafford has appeared in 3 playoff games, won 0. In the third of that time, Jared Goff has appeared in 6 and won 3. And I'd argue that Jared Goff is the single most under-the-radar player in NFL history to have back-to-back 4,600-yard passing seasons. He's actually won 42 out of his 69 games. So I know that Kieran's going to love a 69 statistic. So, you know, that was especially for him. So he's won 60% of the games that he's played, which isn't disgraceful. And aside from that, aside from his rookie season where he didn't win a game, Jared Goff has had 4 consecutive winning seasons, and he's already been to 2 Pro Bowls. So I know we're going to be talking about how amazing this is for the Rams and Matthew Stafford, but I've got a bit of love for Jared Goff. I don't think he's as bad as everyone's making out.
No, I don't disagree with that, mate. And I think you've only got to rewind the clock back, 12, 18 months. And he obviously got a new contract. Everything seemed quite rosy in LA, didn't it? It's obviously gone a little bit south this year. I don't think there's any denying that. And obviously at the back end of the season, in a quarterback battle with an unheard of John Wolford, and potentially that was allegedly going to be the case heading into training camp. We'll never know that now, obviously, because the trade has gone down. But Kieran, from the other side of this, obviously, like I say, the Rams giving up a lot. They're obviously looking to win now. Why do you think the Rams have won this trade if we were declaring a winner today?
Stafford's never had a good defense. And with this Rams defense that he's got now, they are immediately Super Bowl contenders. He's got competent coaching staff, a decent amount of weapons, and an amazing defense behind him, which I think elevates the Rams to at least maybe NFC Championship game next year. But the most important part of this trade is the Rams got out from that horrendous contract they decided to award Jared Goff off the back of, let's be honest, completely average play beforehand. And the biggest just for the record, Arsenal fans are going to be fuming that Kroenke's actually made a move for one of his teams and it wasn't Arsenal, which is going to annoy is going to annoy every Arsenal fan I've ever met. But Matthew Stafford has consistently been the most underrated quarterback in the league year after year after year. Look, he makes fantastic plays week after week after week, and the same plays he makes when they're made by people like Patrick Mahomes are making it on SportsCenter and have got the announcers stroking each other off over it. Oh, it's so good. Oh, he sounds like a frog. So I think now in this big market where people actually care, people are going to look at him as the amazing quarterback he is, and I think he's going to have potentially over the next 3 years, an MVP season, at least one NFC Championship appearance, and probably a Super Bowl. If this team, look, they're a ready-to-go team. They just needed someone to plug into the offense because, your stop option at quarterback is a guy called John Wolford, who sounds like he works in a bank, then you've got a bit of a problem. So this immediately makes them contenders. And let's not just say it's not all Stafford. Let's make a point of that. It's not all Stafford. That defense needed someone to go on the field and score points. And if anyone remembers a game from a decent amount of years ago when the Lions needed a touchdown and an extra point to win, and Matthew Stafford threw that touchdown with a dislocated arm. It was hanging out of its damn socket, and he went back on the field and he threw that. And the only serious injury he had was his back broke in half because he was carrying a team for like 10 years. So that's how it broke. That is confirmed by his doctor, by the way. Inside sources confirm that. But he is so talented, and they finally put him on a team where he's in a position to win. And I think if he doesn't win a Super Bowl, it will be the most unfortunate thing to ever happen to him since he got drafted by the Lions. But, I fully believe Stafford is good enough to lead this team to the promised land for the first time since part-time quarterback, full-time shelf stacker, came in, greatest show on turf.
Yeah, I for what it's worth, I actually think both teams probably get what they want out of this trade, don't they? I don't think it's a bad trade either way, to be honest, whichever way you look at it. Probably the biggest winner, Tim, we'll circle back, is Deshaun Watson in all of this, or the Texans, because if that's the price for Matthew Stafford, again, we got plenty of time to talk about this, mate, but boy, oh boy, that price tag just went up, surely, didn't it?
Yeah, and just so the record, I'm astounded that Kieran's reference to Patrick Mahomes didn't include the words ketchup and steak on that one, but we won't circle too much on that one. Yeah, I mean, obviously part of the deal and why it looks so astronomical on paper is because essentially it's a Brock Osweiler 2.0. It's a salary dump, and like Kieran said, it's just the NFC Brock Osweiler. But yeah, I mean, if you look at all the other teams and what they offered for Stafford, I think Carolina was what their pick at 8 or whatever, and whatever. I think a third round pick or something. I think it was basically the equivalent of like a third or fourth overall pick or something. So yeah, the main reason it looks so I googling on first look is obviously because they're getting rid of Jared Goff, and if you're Jared Goff, I don't know what you think. But yeah, second back to Deshaun Watson, like I say, we kind of know what the asking price is, always being flown about on all over social media. It's a couple of firsts and maybe a player coming back, and with David Culley, said obviously he's the new head coach there. He's obviously come in and said, he is the quarterback. And when I came into the job, Deshaun Watson is the quarterback, and he signed an extension last year and for 4 years. And if they use the franchise tag on him, they essentially have him till 2028. So as much as Deshaun Watson wants to kick up a fuss about it, it's not really up to him. I know that his agent's going to be calling all 31 other teams, including Kansas City. I joke, of course. He's going to be calling a good 3/4 of that league's front offices and trying to get him to part ways with a few picks. But David Culley himself, again, another massive eyebrow raiser in terms of, there's been a few eyebrows raised this offseason with some of the head coaches. And when you take the assistant head coach, wide receiver / passing coordinator of the Ravens, the passing game that they all want in their front offices. I mean, what is the world coming to at the end of the day? But he's been an assistant head coach in KC back in, he ended that tenure in 2016. So he has been to a good passing team as well. By your tongue, Lawrence. It's not a surprise that Deshaun Watson requested a trade kind of pretty much the day after, wasn't it? And he said that he's come out and said, or rumors have it that his mind hasn't changed, and David Culley's not going to change anyone's mind, is it? But yeah, I don't think the price tag would probably change too much because I think everyone appreciates it as a bit of a salary cap dump to Detroit, and like you say, deal that works for both teams.
Fair dues indeed, mate. Let's move it on then, fellas. There's plenty of time. Like I say, we can talk quarterbacks throughout the course of the off-season. But there is one final game left, of course, in the 2020-2021 NFL season. It is, of course, the big one. It is Super Bowl 55. We never thought we would get there at certain stages throughout the course of this season, but we seemingly will do. And, of course, we have got the Chiefs defending against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Lawrence, talk us through both these franchises in terms of their history in the Super Bowl with your retro head on. Obviously, KC, as I say, defending. Been a while since we've seen Tampa here, though, but take us through both teams throughout their history in the Super Bowl, buddy.
Sure. Just kind of taking it back one game, but I'll be very brief with it. Buccaneers have been to 4 NFC championships, obviously winning 2002 and 2020, losing back in 1979 and in 1999. And in their first 2 NFC championships, they scored a combined 6 points. So obviously, seeing Tom Brady's first touchdown drive in the NFC championship that's just happened eclipsed what they managed to not achieve in their first 2 NFC championships. So I found that kind of interesting when they just marched straight down the field, first drive, touchdown. Chiefs have been to 6 AFC championships, winning in 66, 69, 2019 and 2020, and they lost in 93 and 2018 to none other than Tom Brady. So this is the second Bucs Super Bowl and the Chiefs' fourth. The Bucs are one of only 4 teams in NFL history to remain undefeated in Super Bowls. So they're 1-0. Bucs 2 Super Bowls in 45 seasons, won 1. Chiefs 4 Super Bowls in 61 seasons, 51 in the NFL and 10 seasons in the AFL, where they actually won 2 championships. So they've won 2 Super Bowls, and they also won an AFL championship back in 1962 when they were called the Dallas Texans. So there we go. Small little stat here. Average margin of victory for the Bucs, it's 27 in their 1 game, and for the Chiefs, it's 13.5 is their margin of victory in their 2 wins. So the Chiefs first appeared in the first ever Super Bowl in 1967, before the game was even called the Super Bowl. And in fact, if it wasn't for the Chiefs, we might have had the 55 Ultimate Bowls or 55 Premier Bowls. They were names proposed in 1969 because Commissioner Pete Rozelle at the time wasn't sold on the name Super Bowl. And Super Bowl itself came from the Chiefs owner, Lamar Hunt, observing his kids playing with a Super Ball, a bouncy ball that was created by a chemist called Norman Stingley. So Lamar Hunt not only gave the Super Bowl its name, he also went on to have the AFC Championship named after him in retrospect in 1984. So following their 1967 beatdown for the Vince Lombardi Trophy, and then which they lost to the Packers, they actually tied the game early before losing by 25. The Chiefs took only 3 more seasons to get back to the Super Bowl. And in 1970, the Chiefs quarterback Len Dawson returned to help the Chiefs earn their first title. They actually went 16-0 up against the Minnesota Vikings at halftime, 3 consecutive field goals, and a 5-yard Mike Garrett run, which you might not remember the name of the player, but you've probably heard the name of the play, which is the 65 toss power trap. So if you've ever watched any of these old NFL films and you see Hank Stram going, we just might break it open, 65 toss power trap, 65, and it's a classic. So if you haven't seen it, watch that moment. It's a pretty anticlimactic second half. The Vikings got a touchdown, but MVP Len Dawson found Otis Taylor for a 46-yard score, sealed the game in the 3rd quarter, and that was that. I'm not going to say much about Super Bowl 54 because it was only a year ago and hopefully everyone was watching it. But it was a half a century gap between the Chiefs winning their first Super Bowl and winning their second. And just as a reminder, they were down by 10 points in the 4th quarter before ripping off 21 points in the last 7 minutes. Mahomes obviously winning the MVP with 2 touchdown passes and an early run. And then if we go on to the Buccaneers, you might not know this, but they joined the NFL in 1976 and were originally placed in the AFC West. They lost their first 26 games as a franchise before turning their fortunes around in 1979, won their first division title, upset the Eagles in the divisional round. And at one point, their entire defense was called for unnecessary roughness. Not a player, the entire defense. So they got to an NFC championship. They held the Rams without a touchdown, but they managed 0 points themselves. Doug Williams and Mike Ray combined for 4 completions in the game. 4 completions from 2 quarterbacks in a whole game. My goodness, it's like the Denver Broncos of earlier this season. The Bucs and the Rams bizarrely then met 20 years later in another defensive slugfest. Rams won that again, 11-6, beating Bucs rookie quarterback Sean King. And then Tampa Bay finally reached their first Super Bowl in 2002, smashing the Eagles on the road before facing the Oakland Raiders in Super Bowl 37. Bucs defense crushed the Raiders. They got 5 interceptions of Rich Gannon, returned 3 for touchdowns. Safety Dexter Jackson won the MVP for 2 first-half pickoffs neither of them that he took to the house, but 2 two kind of momentum-turning interceptions. The Keenan McCardell, the veteran receiver, caught 2 touchdowns from former London Monarchs quarterback Brad Johnson. And the game's leading rusher on the day was actually Michael Pittman, the father of Michael Pittman Jr., the rookie Colts receiver. So kind of bringing it from back then to now. The Buccaneers held the Raiders on the game to 19 rushing yards, and they had 5 sacks. And this is a Buccaneers team that had arguably one of the greatest defensive units ever. Warren Sapp, John Lynch, Simeon Rice, Derek Brooks, and their nickelback, Dwight Smith, became the only defensive back in Super Bowl history to take 2 interceptions to the house, the latter in the final seconds of the game. And Dexter Jackson remains the last defensive back to win an MVP award, and is only the third defensive back to do so in Super Bowl history. So there we go.
An excellent whistle-stop tour, mate, of the history of these two franchises in the Super Bowl. If you like your retro stuff, you'll see scrolling across the bottom of the screen all our coverage throughout Super Bowl week, including on Saturday a very special interview that Lawrence has conducted with one of the members of the press that votes in the Hall of Fame ceremonies, which obviously will be happening in and around the Super Bowl weekend. So keep your ears peeled for that one. Should be a good one if you like your retro side of things. Let's bring it back though, fellas, to the modern day before I kick you boys out for the time being. And we'll talk with the rest of the crew around some of the other players and the other storylines to look out for. But obviously a lot of this will be made about the quarterbacks. You've got, the greatest of all time, or arguably, I'm sick of saying arguably, you've got the greatest of all time on one side of the field, and you've got the, potentially the best
Tom
one.
Brady.
Yeah, you've got the best guy at the moment, that's obviously just about making his way in his career. But Tim, let's start with you, and let's talk Patrick Mahomes. Why does he need to win it, and, what will it prove if he does do just that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. You posed that question to me, and obviously on the rundown, and I was kind of thinking to myself, why does Mahomes needs to win it? It's actually not a lot to cherry pick. I did come up with a few. I think once you've won one, you always want to win 2, don't you? You want to be up there with the Troy Aikmans, the Joe Montanas, and all the rest of it. And the players that have won back-to-back Super Bowls. You don't want to be there with your regular Joe Flacco's and all the rest of them. So. He'll also want to do it because it's obviously he's probably got a target in his head to surpass Tom Brady. It's obviously easier to surpass 6 than it is 7 if he loses, obviously on Sunday. So that's something. You see how many straws I'm grasping at here. But I think it'll also probably answer a bit. I'll probably get a bit of heat for this, but was the first one a fluke? Now, I know that he is going to be a quarterback that we talk about for years and years and years. But like you say, as someone mentioned a bit earlier, they scored 21 points in that fourth quarter and were 10 points down. Yeah, there is an element of luck to be able to kind of pull yourself out of the fire from that. And I know we've seen, loads and loads of instances of Mahomes pulling it back from a large deficit in the playoffs, which is a sign of obviously a potentially Hall of Fame quarterback. But I think as well, depending on obviously how it plays out, I think it would probably just quash the 0.0001% that maybe think that they were a bit fortunate to win last year, and it kind of just cements that Patrick Mahomes is here, because once once you've won one, you want to win 2, and if you've only ever won one, you kind of think, well, if you imagine a universe where from this point Patrick Mahomes never wins another Super Bowl, I don't think that will ever happen, but if it did, you have to then think 10 points down in the fourth quarter, pulling a fourth quarter comeback out of his backside. So you'd have to kind of be a bit tarnished, wouldn't it? So I think that would probably be something that he'd want to get done as soon as possible, and then get on to 3, 4, 5, and catch up to Brady. Let's say if you win the second one, generally you're going to probably be in the Hall of Fame, aren't you? And again, I don't think there's many other things that reasons why Mahomes will want to win. Obviously, apart from for Andy Reid, for his team and his state, to get a better Patrick Price at State Farm. And I think as well. I think as well, what it will do is, because again, last year they weren't necessarily expected to win as much as they are this year. This year they were kind of like, okay, here we go. Mahomes is taking over the league now. The weight of expectation was far greater than it was last season. So I think being able to deliver, I know he's delivered time again under pressure, but I think this one will kind of be the pinnacle of Mount Everest.
Yeah, I think he's certainly adept at coming back from big deficits. It seemed to be a theme of the playoff run last year, didn't it? And like you say, I'm pretty sure it won't be the last time we're talking about Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. Will he ever get to the sort of numbers that we're talking about with the guy on the other side of the field? It seems impossible to think that. It probably will never, ever happen. We'll probably never, ever see another one quite like him. And Kieran, you've obviously had the pleasure of watching him do it for your team year after year after year. There's obviously a lot more in terms of the storylines that they probably aren't even there, and people want to make these out to be storylines heading into this one. So talk us through what it means for TB12.
I'm not going to sound like Skip Bayless right now, because your boy So Cold, they call me Drip Bayless, Wave Chappelle. And the last time I spoke about something this passionately, Bo Pelini got fired. So Tom, Edward, Patrick, Brady. Patrick Mahomes is 100% named after him and not his dad. That too after his name is because he's always going to be second best. But Tom Brady, he is 43 years old in his 10th Super Bowl, going for his 7th ring, which, just for the record, no franchise has ever achieved, let alone a single player, and he has transformed the Tampa Bay Buccaneers into an actual contender. And this is bigger for his legacy, because I think Bill Belichick, I think everyone will agree, has cemented himself as the greatest coach in NFL history and of all time. I think that's established as a fact. If you disagree with me, go get some hot dogs. Right now,
bring Vince Lombardi with me.
Never heard of him, mate. Never heard of him. His hat was shit as well. Looked like he was a reporter from the 20s. Vince Lombardi, see? No, I don't want to hear none of that. Tom Brady is trying to establish that he was great outside of the greatest system ever in football, the New England Patriots under Bill Belichick. Now, let's not get it twisted. Brady will always be the GOAT. But if he can beat Patrick Mahomes in a Super Bowl with, a team that was better than Patriots teams that he won the Super Bowl with, but a couple years when we had like Randy Moss, Tyler, and those sort of guys, this is it for him. I think if he wins, I think he should retire. I know he says he wants to play more, but when you got Bunda like Giselle back at home, I'd hang him up personally. What he needs, if he wins this, his 10th Super Bowl, his 7th ring, what have you got left to play for? Like, what's the point anymore? Bro, I get bored after 2 seasons on Madden, and this guy's on his, 21st season, his 10th Super Bowl? Man, he's just playing for legacy at this point. He doesn't need money. He's already rich beyond his wildest dreams. His wife's richer than he has. He's got multiple houses. His wife's Brazilian. He's got it made. He's dating a Brazilian supermodel and he's out here risking brain damage. The man just wants to play football. He is insanely good. And like I said, I don't feel this passionate about anything like fire Bo Pelini. So he is the greatest football player bar none. Whether he wins this game or not. If he wins this game, he just proves at 43, his testicles are so huge, he's going to need a separate truck to carry them around in.
Can I just make a minor point here? That if the Chiefs win, and we know that they are favourites at the moment, if the Chiefs win, Tom Brady's legacy will have on the side of it 4 Super Bowl losses. 4 Super Bowl losses. That is
how many quarterbacks can say they've made it to 4 Super Bowls?
That is not a GOAT.
Once again, telling you. Tom Brady.
Terry Bradshaw, 4-0 in Super Bowls. Joe Montana, 4-0 in Super Bowls. Joe Montana, let's just remind our listeners how many interceptions Joe Montana threw in 4 Super Bowl wins. Let's just remind ourselves. Will that be 0?
How many rings does Tom Brady have?
Just 2 more. Just 2
Okay,
more.
so he has.
How many
2
more seasons has he played more than Joe Montana?
I'm just going to go.
A lot more.
It's irrelevant.
A lot more.
If Joe Montana was to go, he could have
by the
carried
law of
on
averages,
playing.
He's played more seasons. He's had
Law of averages. This is
more
football.
opportunities.
This is look. I know he's got a noodle arm. I know he's only used to throwing balls to 5'5" wide receivers who've just finished their shift at Walmart. But he is the GOAT. It's irrelevant how many times he's played. Law of averages don't count in football. Imagine if I'm like, law of averages, that means if I play in 100 Super Bowls, I could potentially 11. No, he's the most talented player ever.
When you 4 Super Bowls,
stop.
Just throwing that out there.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'll tell you what I'm going to do, fellas. I'll tell you what I'm going to do because it's time to move on, and we're going to bring some of the other boys in. I'm going to drop you boys backstage and let you have your argument off air. How does that sound? For the time being, fellas, it's been an absolute pleasure as always on a Monday night. But for now, it is goodbye from Kieran. It is indeed goodbye from Lawrence, and it will indeed be goodbye from Tim. And that just leaves me on the screen. So I best get some company in with me, and let's bring in from the family, Mr. Lee Wakefield and James from the fantasy side of things. Boys, how are we this evening?
Not too bad.
Good man. Enjoying that little argument there, were we, fellas, in the backstage room?
Got kind of heated there, doesn't it?
It did a little bit. We can just see them all off camera now, just throwing fisticuffs at each other off screen. But yeah, the boys will be back a little bit later on.
I'm watching Virtual Fighter in this bottom corner.
Right then, fellas, let's move the conversation along. Like I said, there's going to be plenty of talk around the quarterbacks in this one. But Lee seems adept with you being the man from the college branch to talk about the rookies in this game, because I think the rookies overall this season for both of these teams have had significant contributions. We talked about Green Bay a couple of weeks ago and the fact that draft class has essentially contributed nothing. That certainly can't be said for these two teams, can it though, mate?
It can't, no. Significant rookie contributions, as you mentioned. So kind of take it team by team. Not going to go for every pick, so don't worry, I'm not going to kind of bore everyone with that. But just kind of the headlines, really. Tampa Bay, what a draft class this has been, especially at the top. They got great value with the early picks. Tristan Wirfs, Antoine Winfield Jr. Just wasted no time, have they, getting into the league and making their mark on it. Making significant contributions throughout the whole season, really. And I'm going to mention Wirfs a little bit later on, I feel, as well. In the mid-rounds, obviously, a little bit more underwhelming, but obviously what you're going to get from mid-round guys. But I feel like Keyshawn Vaughn has got a future in the league for sure. He's definitely shown flashes. And Tyler Johnson, the Minnesota wide receiver that they took, has again been finding his feet lately. And I feel like he's got a real knack to come up with like a big catch in a big moment. He's got great hands. And no better place to do it otherwise, other than the Super Bowl, really. So, although we're going to talk about Tampa Bay's weapons and things like that, and he's way down, sort of on the depth chart. But I feel like in a big moment, I feel like he can come up with it. And if we're going to be talking about big game moments, like I say, it gets no bigger, does it really, than this? So, yeah, some fantastic contributions headlined by Wirfs and Antoine Winfield Jr. for the Bucs, and they're going to play a big role moving forward into the game on Sunday. With Kansas City, it's not really gone as planned at the top too much, has it? Edwards-Helaire's shown flashes again. He's been all right, but he's not really set the league alight as much as, you would have thought that a hand-picked by Patrick Mahomes running back would have done for the Kansas City Chiefs this year. But they've just got so much wealth to spread around on offense, haven't they? It's been difficult. And it's one of them, isn't it, where they've got so much talent on offense that there is so many mouths to feed. It's a cliche, as Tim mentioned before, it's cliche week, and I'll sort of start with my first one there. But yeah, after that, I think the star of the draft class really is L'Jarius Sneed, the 4th round corner out of Louisiana Tech. Stats wise, he's been great. 3 interceptions, 7 pass deflections. But not only that, I feel like he's been the Chiefs' best rookie and best corner in the whole season. I obviously am a Chargers fan, as I won't take too long to mention. And I obviously take a little look at the divisional draft classes, and I was quite happy that they didn't address their cornerback room until the 4th round. But I would say that L'Jarius Sneed has had me up with a little bit of egg on my face after thinking that. Like I say, I'm not really counting Tyrann Mathieu, but I would say he's been their best corner this year. Lots of sort of star power moving forward. He looks like a real star in the draft. He's going to play better than that draft position. He's going to play and exceed expectations already with him. And it's pretty difficult with the Chiefs anyway, because if you're drafting in the 30s in the first round and beyond all the time, then it's pretty hard. But yeah, as you mentioned, mate, it's been a good year for the rookies on both of these teams and some stars of the future for sure.
Yeah, most definitely. And James, if we turn our sort of minds to the game itself, I mean, we've mentioned, the obvious one. And to be fair, I felt for the kid because he was almost a victim of the hype that everybody else created for him in terms of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's obviously coming back from a pretty significant injury at the back end of the regular season. Obviously got his first taste of the playoff action in the divisional round. I'm sure he's a guy you're probably expecting to see some contributions from come the big game on Sunday. Anybody else? And obviously just give us your thoughts on Edwards-Helaire as well, mate.
Well, yeah, I mean, seems the logical place to start, but it's a bit interesting. Lev Bell looks highly unlikely to play. Other side, you'll notice I've picked the 3 jerseys of players who play for teams in this Super Bowl when they were with teams that this household supports. So spare a thought for a few various breakable objects in this house at some point. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the thing is, the Bucs have got a really decent run defense going, and the Chiefs have basically been, passing a lot of the time. And, they've been literally middle of the pack when it comes to the run game, and that's when they've had sort of all hands on deck fit. So I can sort of see the game script already being against Edwards-Helaire really having a major impact. But he'll be there, and he has the role, because otherwise, you're just going to get empty boxes, and people, basically the Bucs, don't care. So, it's pretty much on the run game. So Edwards-Helaire, will be able to take a bit of a back seat, but don't be surprised if he ends up getting a bit of the passing work in this one. So that might be the element of his game to look out for the most. L'Jarius Sneed, I'll stay with the Chiefs for now, but I agree, he's been fantastic. The injury side did hurt them, but every game he played, they won, which was, I believe, 9 in the regular season, then all the postseason. So that's he is questionable so far, but I believe he should be okay to play. I think other people have got more up-to-date injury reports than I do at the moment. But the Chiefs have been fantastic against wide receivers, so I won't be surprised if he actually gets an interception in this game. So keep an eye out. Lee's done a good job talking up Wirfs already. Just one little, it's not really a stat. I tried to come up with something accurate and it really wasn't working. But Tom Brady's been sacked 26 times this season, which I believe is in the sort of top 10 best in terms of, least amount of time sacked for a starting QB. Something along those lines. But effectively, he's done well. And if you go by how many times he's been sacked per game, Mahomes and Brady have got basically the same number, which is pretty much testament to both offensive lines, I think. And Wirfs has been a massive part of why that Bucs offensive line has worked so well. Winfield should have a solid job in safety. It's another one where he's questionable, but hopefully due to play. Tyler Johnson is interesting because referring to the other jersey behind me, Antonio Brown is another one who's unlikely to play, I believe. He's questionable, but we're saying it's unlikely, I think. So he sort of steps up to that wide receiver 4 role, but he seems to me to share the wide receiver 3 with Scotty Miller sometimes. And if Brady opts for the long bomb, it's quite often Johnson that gets on the end of it. So that may be one thing to look out for actually in the Super Bowl. Tyler Johnson may just find himself on the end of, a long play for a touchdown. So it could be an interesting one, especially in the betting markets as well, if you just fancy a long-range punt.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He was the guy that was actually on the end of the pass interference call, which was obviously one that a lot of people were up in arms about. So, yeah, like you say, he does see a significant amount of work, doesn't he, in that 3rd or 4th wide receiver spot. Let's turn our attention, fellas, to defence, particularly the Bucs. I think, that's been something that's been talked about as being, a strength of the unit. Todd Bowles, wherever he seems to go, seems to be able to put a good defence together, and certainly... it's been the star of the show, hasn't it? As much as Brady gets the accolades, and obviously he plays his part in that. I think it's safe to say that the defense was really the winner. Certainly in the divisional round, Lee, against the Bucs, against the Packers, and they've certainly been good. So who should we be looking for from the defensive side of the ball on Sunday?
Well, I think you set me up perfectly, Sean. To be honest with you, you've talked about Todd Bowles, and he just does put together such a good unit, doesn't he? He got bombed out of Arizona a little bit when he was head coach there, but came back sort of doing what he's doing now, and he's put together a fantastic unit, a really well coached unit. And the Bucks have gone after it by drafting well, as we mentioned earlier, and also getting a few free agents in there as well. So yeah, excellent altogether. And I feel like if we're going to pinpoint one specific area of this Bucks defense, as you mentioned, it's going to be the defensive line. And I feel like that's where the game's going to be won and lost, if I'm pretty honest, mate. Like you mentioned, we saw how they overpowered the Packers' offensive line. And, generally speaking, I know they were missing David Bakhtiari, but generally pretty good defensive line, all told. And, they just made mincemeat out of them at some stages, sorry. And they'll be wanting the same on Sunday. And I think they can do it. I think they've got the personnel all the way through, on the defensive line, all the way through the defense to put stress on the offense. And it's a great offense, as we mentioned, a lot of weapons for the Chiefs, obviously a great quarterback as well. But I feel like they've got the talent to do it. Vita Vea coming back at the right time, perfect time, off his ankle injury was just enormous for them. I think him and Sue, and to a lesser extent Golston, they provide the push through the middle, and then they occupy enough through the middle and enough of the defensive line to make it really easy for JPP and Shaq Barrett to come off the edges. And don't forget, this is an aggressive defense that allows their linebackers to blitz, and you've got White and you've got Levonta David, who sometimes do a great job doing that, especially White going through the middle. We know that the Chiefs line, in terms of talent, maybe isn't the best, and they're missing Eric Fisher. And I don't know if we would have said this a few years ago, because he's not had the greatest career, especially after he was drafted so high. But they'll miss Eric Fisher, and they're a well-drilled unit, but maybe not the most talented unit. So if they're going to be put under the stress and the strains and in the fire of this line, of this defensive line that the Bucs have, it's going to be a tough night for them. And we know that Patrick Mahomes does a great job of aiding that rush by dropping back, half the field sometimes, it seems, before he launches it downfield. And I think he's going to have to play smart, because I think this is where, like I said before, the game's going to be won and lost in these trenches, I feel, with the Bucs on the defensive side of the ball. I mentioned the linebackers. Levonta David as well has been one of the best linebackers in the league this year. And, if you're looking at Travis Kelce, can David cover him? Can they kind of deal with the linebackers? Sorry, can he deal with the linebackers kind of covering him? Again, it's another Titanic matchup, isn't it, throughout the whole of what we've got here, for the whole of the game from both sides of the ball. But yeah, I think they've again got the personnel to do it. And kind of a bit of a redemption for the Bucs secondary. They've got a few young corners back there, Carlton Davis, Jamel Dean, Sean Murphy-Bunting. They didn't have the easiest starts to life in the league, but I feel like they've created a really, really strong cornerback trio there. And obviously we mentioned Winfield Jr. earlier, who's again been superb. So, like I mentioned, Todd Bowles sort of doing what he does best, being aggressive, dialing it up. And they've got superb players at all three levels of the defense. I'll say quote-unquote home field advantage as well. No, it's not exactly the same, even though, the preparation and all the kind of minor percentages and the psychological effect that it will be to play in Tampa, be in your own dressing room, things like that. It all adds up. And I feel like the matchup of the game is almost Todd Bowles versus Andy Reid. It's going to be an absolute show. Whether they can kind of set the bar low enough for Brady to get over is a different story, because obviously, as I mentioned, Mahomes and all the weapons they've got are absolutely fantastic for the Chiefs. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to watching the Bucs defense. Obviously, we know that I'm a defensive side of the ball kind of guy. But yeah, it's going to be a show, as mentioned, and lots to look forward to for that matchup.
Yeah, most definitely, mate. Most definitely. I'm certainly looking forward to it. And let's flip it to the other side of the field then, James, in terms of what the Bucs can do against this Chiefs defence. I think the Chiefs defence, like I say, much maligned a year ago. They haven't had a huge change in personnel. We mentioned, obviously, the moves that they did make through the draft, particularly with adding Snead in with that fourth-round pick has been significant. But a player that's really caught my eye in recent weeks, he's a name that, the casual viewer will know, of course. I'm talking Tyrann Mathieu. He seems to have really upped his game at the back end of the season. He's become a real leader on the back end of that defense, hasn't he, mate?
He's the kind of player that needs to be a leader for a team to be successful. And when he's got his head in gear and he's, motivated to the cause, he is solid as it comes, really. And safety-wise, he's backed up with Sorensen and Thornhill as well, which I think each of them have sort of stepped up. They're still overall, over the regular season, they were very much middle of the pack, sort of 16th overall on defense. But sort of when you look at it, they're probably a little bit better than the sum of their parts, I think. At the back end, you've got Breland, Ward, and then the aforementioned Snead as well. So keeping Evans, Godwin, Miller, and Johnson quiet with Brady throwing is going to be a challenge. And then you've also got to consider the other name above me in Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones as well. You're going to have to deal with as well. But Frank Clark, Chris Jones, everyone on defensive line side have been, pretty solid as well. I think they've got enough to be able to sort of, neutralize, but I don't think it's necessarily going to be a low-scoring game. I think both sides, they do still have defensive frailties, but you can't say that the defense is like, abysmal to the point that they're going to have to outscore the opponents. The defensive side of the ball is probably going to win the game whichever way. And there are, Matthew is probably the playmaker that you look to probably get the crucial interception. And I mentioned earlier that Snead could end up being that player that gets the interception. So when I come back later on, my bold take goes along those lines. So bit of a teaser to stay tuned for that. But
interesting. Same for me, actually.
Probably the same stat, different player. But let's
we'll see.
Let's leave that as a carrot dangling for anyone who's considering do I wait to the end. Please do.
Absolutely, please do, mate. We've still got other guys to bring on as well, which we'll get to shortly. We are going to bring them in the next segment. But boys, just before I let you go, and Lee, yourself in particular, obviously you announced it on the college podcast that came out last week, and we've talked about the rookies and the impact that they've made in terms of these teams this year. Obviously, teams will be looking to restock their cupboards with plenty of rookie talent, and you and the boys got something special lined up, mate. Talk us through what the plans are.
Yeah, we absolutely have. For anyone who missed it, earlier on this week, we announced that the Full10Yards college football team are going to bring you a draft guide for this upcoming draft that will be coming up in the spring. I don't know if we've even got a date for it yet, but the draft will be going ahead in spring, and we're going to bring you out a draft guide for it. So, yeah, really excited to bring this out. From a personal point of view, just before we kind of get into it, it's something that I've wanted to do personally for quite a while, and the lads who I'm obviously working with at the moment have enabled me to do that. So thanks to them for that, really. Along with, being able to do that with the rest of the college team. And I'm really excited. We've got a shared vision and loads of hard work's gone in, to be fair. Unbelievable amount of hard work from everyone involved, and, still a fair bit to go. And thankfully, everything's running pretty smoothly so far, we say, touch wood, knock on wood. I won't say John Gruden, because obviously Raiders guy, but anyway, moving straight on. So anyway, yeah, what can people expect? Much less than me gushing, I guess. We've all been beavering away watching, hundreds of hours worth of film on hundreds of prospects really so far, and like I say, still some more to go. And what we're going to try and do is put together the best products for a range of people really. People can expect 300 or so players. We've not actually got an exact number yet. We're still adding people in and taking people away. But yeah, around 300 players, all of our takes, all of our ratings for everyone. And like I said before, hopefully something for everyone as well. We want it to be kind of accessible for those who are kind of draft rookies or college football rookies. Because we were all there once. We were all there once trying to get into this sort of thing, and wishing we had this sort of product available. But we also want it to be, something for the draft veterans, for them to get some good value from it as well. So, like I say, a little bit for everyone. It's, Rob's been working on the design work, and all credit to him. He's made it a very attractive look, and it's really, really colourful. So it's great to look at as well. So, yeah, one for maybe younger viewers as well, and readers, should I say. So, yeah, as I mentioned, loads of information. We've even got a little place where you can put in your own mock draft, because everyone loves a mock draft, don't they, when the draft's coming up. So you can be a bit interactive with it as well. So it'll be available in a couple of ways, pretty similar to what we did with the season guide earlier on in the season, the NFL season guide that we all put together prior to the season. And most importantly, you won't have to pay too much money for it as well. It will be very, very affordable. Details to be released in the next coming weeks. So, if you like the sound of all that above, follow at Full10Yards CFB on Twitter and keep your eyes well and truly peeled, I'd say.
Absolutely, mate. I will be pre-ordering my own copy, mate. If you can find the Browns a good linebacker, mate, that'd be much appreciated. Much appreciated. Fellas, for the time being, thank you very much for your company. You will be back on in a little bit, so I will stick you guys backstage. And then, without further ado, thank you to these two boys who sat there patiently all evening long while everybody else has had their say. Let's welcome them in. There we are. They are still awake, ladies and gents. Rob, Andy, welcome in, fellas. How are we both?
Yeah, with Kieran and Lawrence going at it a minute, like half an hour ago, we couldn't not stay awake, to be quite honest. That was good television.
Yeah, Lawrence has even now took to the tactic of actually going onto social media and posting comments now as a viewer just to make his points look, ladies and gents. That's how low these fellas are stooping. But we'll get those boys back on in a little bit. We'll get them on. We want to talk to you boys about some of the skill players in this one. We've talked quarterbacks. We've talked there with the lads about the defensive side of the ball, and they've mentioned it about the amount of weapons that are on show. And Rob, let's start with you. We've obviously got two of them lining up for the Kansas City Chiefs in terms of Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, who have pretty much, let's be honest, been unstoppable all year. You've only got to go back a few weeks, and Tyreek Hill was absolutely obliterating this Bucs secondary. Travis Kelce hasn't been stopped all year. Talk us through it, mate. Are they going to be the stars of the show again on Sunday?
Yeah, I think you'd be surprised if they weren't, Sean, wouldn't you? I mean, they're two what I call Madden players. They put up silly numbers, don't they? I mean, just looking at the last few games, they put up, just in the playoffs, 219 yards against the Browns, 290 yards against the Bills, the pair of them. They are pretty much unstoppable. I think it's going to be the case. I mean, take yourself back a few months ago when the first meeting of these guys happened at Tampa, where Tyreek Hill absolutely, it blew the doors off, didn't he? And poor old Carlton Davis, who was marking that day, got taught a lesson. I can't remember the exact stats. It was over 200 yards and 3 touchdowns, wasn't it? Something stupid like that. And he was beating him on the corner routes. He was beating him on the slot, in the slot. He was beating him on a wheel route. He just did everything that game, Tyreek Hill. And when he's on his game, he's unstoppable. He's so quick and shifty. And you've got the perfect complement with Travis Kelce, a big dude, 6'5", 260 pounds. In the middle. If Tyreek Hill's not free, Travis Kelce will be, and that's why they work so well together, hand in hand, a 1-2 punch, if you like. And it's just dangerous. It's just so dangerous. And when you've got a quarterback like Mahomes throwing the ball, man, the sky's endless. It's no surprise that they're in the Super Bowl.
No, absolutely. Like you say, Kelce been setting records all season long, and I think Tyreek Hill, I haven't got the exact stat, but you mentioned it was 200 yards. I think it was 240, 250, something like that, but it was like 200. It was about 210 in the first quarter, wasn't it? I think we all thought he was going to smash the single game receiving record. He kind of took his foot off the gas a little bit, which was kind of him if you're a Bucs fan, and the Bucs did make a bit of a comeback in that game. But let's turn our attention, Andy, to the Buccaneers side of the ball. We talked about the wide receivers, questionable whether Antonio Brown's going to go or not, but certainly it looks as though Evans and Godwin will be a go. They've obviously been leaning quite a bit on Leonard Fournette, who seems to become a different player when it comes to the playoffs. He's obviously been a bit pedestrian through the regular season, but seems to have found his best form at the right time. Talk us through who you think are going to be the difference makers from the skill positions for the Bucs, mate.
Yeah, no worries. Firstly, I just want to say, do you reckon Rob's a Colts fan with all that horrible blue in the background there?
Before we came on air, someone came to my house and just puked Colts everywhere.
Would have been the Packers if you were here this week, wouldn't it, mate?
Oh, mate, get out. Let's not bring this in. Should we go? Shall me and you go right now?
I'm not quite into that beef, mate. We're all good. Obviously, loads of different options to talk through Tampa's offense. It's some of the best weapons in the league, to be fair, aren't they? For me, the main guy who I've loved for ages and is one of the most underrated players in the league is definitely Mike Evans. Just 1,000 yards every season, consistent with obviously Jameis, who's Rob and I's guy. So getting that shout there, mate. But yeah, this season he's not obviously has been as dominant on the outside there, but he's just that kind of big time player, and he comes up with the big third down catches down the field. He's the immediate red zone target on the outside. So I'm here for Evans. I think he's going to be a huge game for him. It's going to be my bold prediction in there as well. But then if for some reason the Chiefs just focus all efforts on stopping Evans, then the other two wide receivers are just so they've got so much ability to dominate as well, haven't they? Godwin in the slot is arguably the best slot in the league, and just a chain mover time and again, and we all kind of knew that he was going to work well with Brady, and it's definitely happened. Consistent throughout the year, and then you add in Brown, who I don't think obviously is the player that he once was, but he's got that splash play ability, hasn't he? He gets on the outside, dominates when he's taking on the man coverage on there. So yeah, any of them could have a massive game. I'm kind of leaning on Evans to do that. And then, like you mentioned, playoff Lenny's just been in full flow again. 211 yards and 2 touchdowns so far, and 102 yards and a touchdown through the air as well. I must admit, I'm not convinced by his hands, but he's just such a ball behind that Bucks offensive line, which has taken such a forward step this year, and that's a shame for Jameis, really, isn't it? Because Jameis could have done big things behind that as well. So yeah, I think the kind of underrated guy here is going to be Ronald Jones. He's obviously been getting back to full fitness after a late injury in the season. And with everyone kind of hyping Fournette and getting behind him, I think Jones could have a big game as well if he gets on early and has the hot hand, because obviously Arians likes to ride that. So yeah, it's just an embarrassment of riches, isn't it? Really, you don't know where to look, and any of these guys could go off, and that's without mentioning Gronk at tight end or Cam Brate as well.
Yeah, no, wherever you look, there's certainly weapons aplenty for both of these sides. We've talked through some of the sort of big names there, fellas, and obviously, as I said, appreciate your patience waiting in the backstage area. A number of the players have probably been mentioned that you were keeping under your radar for me as the guys to look out for as a bit of a surprise package, but I'll give you the opportunity to put your views across. So let's get a couple or one, at least one from each team from both of you. So Rob, let's come to you. If you were looking for an under the radar chief, who should we be looking out for, do you think?
I don't think he's been mentioned yet, but I'm gonna certainly put him in my DraftKings lineups this weekend. It's going to be Darrell Williams, running back. I know Le'Veon Bell is back, and CEH has been practicing this week, so there's a bit of crowded backfield. But Darrell Williams has had a pretty good postseason for me. He's had 92 all-purpose yards, 1 touchdown. Was active last week, 13 rushes for 52 yards and a touchdown. So, he's a guy for me on the back burner. He's going to be cheap in sort of DKs. And yeah, I think that he's got a chance of having another nice game. But like I said, I know Bell's back and CEH is going to be out there. So how much opportunity will he get? But I think he's done enough to impress in the playoffs so far to get a chance. So hopefully he will and he'll take it.
Yeah, I thought he ran really well, particularly in the Browns game where he was the featured back. Like you say, he was more the change of pace guy last week, and he did obviously get that touchdown. But yeah, like you say, he's certainly earned his opportunity. Yeah. And Andy, let's come to you, mate, just from the Buccaneers side of things. If again we're looking for one a little bit under the radar, where should we be looking, do you think?
Definitely Cam Brate at tight end, been a consistent guy for Tampa for the last few years. Really safe hands. Those kind of chain moving catches and in the end zone as well. He gets open quite well. So I think that's the guy there. 149 yards in the playoffs already, and that's amongst that kind of embarrassment of riches I was talking about. He was one guy that I thought it's going to be really disappointing when they sign all these flash guys to play for Brady, and he's going to miss out. But he's established himself again. He's just a great option to check the ball down to, and he's going to put some yards up on Sunday, I've no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. One to look out for. Like you say, Gronk, he's obviously the name, but he's used traditionally more as a blocker. He's almost like a sixth offensive lineman, to be fair. It's almost cheating playing Gronk as tight end, isn't it, to be honest? But Cameron Brate certainly might be the guy to get on the receiving side of things. Right, fellas, we're going to bring everybody back. I hope everybody's calmed down in the backstage area, fellas. I hope you can all be nice to each other. So let's slowly bring everybody back in. This could look quite busy on the screen. Oh, James has got a problem. Look, James isn't actually sitting down, so that'll be interesting. Well,
if anyone wants to listen to Kieran, by the way, with a statement from college football, go listen to that on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. That was well worth it.
He always brings the passion, does our Kieran. We do love him on a Monday night. Certainly brings plenty of passion. So what we're going to do, fellas, we're going to round it off. We've talked really across all aspects of this game, haven't we? We've talked about the quarterbacks, we've talked about the rookies, the defense, the offensive skill players. Quite simply, boys, just going to give you 60 seconds roughly each. You can all see the timer hopefully in the top corner, so try and police your own time. I'm not going to pull you up if you go too far over, but try and keep it relatively short and sweet for me. I just want to know, quite simply, who wins the Super Bowl, who wins the MVP, and give us a bit of a bold prediction for the weekend ahead. So, Lee, I'm going to start with you, buddy.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'm going to go for a pretty close game, actually. Go Tampa Bay, going to take it 31-24. So it's kind of feeding into a couple of things. First of all, my MVP and my bold prediction. Hope I'm not going to steal James's thunder too much after we kind of looked like we had pretty similar things going on. But MVP, I'm going to let myself go for kind of 2 because my actual kind of shout is a really boring one for Tom Brady because as the winning QB, you're probably going to win the MVP award, which, as I can see, is delighting our friend down there. But I'm going to kind of qualify this as I'm going to kind of give like a secondary shout out because, it's boring to say Tom Brady, isn't it? So I'm going to go for Shaq Barrett. He's got the speed and the bend to cause the Chiefs' defensive line all sorts of problems, as I mentioned before. So I'm going to kind of go for a defensive, one for the brand on the defensive side of the ball. We saw 4 years ago, Von Miller won the Super Bowl MVP. I don't know if Brady will be as bad as Peyton Manning was, but it'll be need a similar sort of performance. I think it's about time a defensive player won it again. And I'm going to go for a defensive ball prediction as well. I feel like with the score as it is, 31-24, this game is going to come down to the last play, and I feel that play is going to be an interception that it ends on. So I feel like the Chiefs are going to be driving down the end of the field that they're going for and going for that touchdown. And Brady's going to get a win with a defender stepping up this time instead of it being on the other end of the story with that one, as it was against the Seahawks all those years ago. So, yeah, bold prediction there. That Tampa Bay, maybe a defensive star will step up and also a defensive end to the game as well.
Like it,
Sorry,
mate.
I went way over my 6 seconds then, sorry.
That's fine, mate. Absolutely fine, mate. I'm liking that as a bold prediction, man. That would be like the ultimate revenge for Carlton Davis, wouldn't it? If Mahomes launches one to Tyreek Hill and Carlton Davis picks it off to win the Super Bowl. Everybody will forget that 210-yard first quarter very quickly, wouldn't they? So, yeah, it could be a good redemption story. James, I'm delighted that you found your way back to the chair, mate. Apologies for throwing you under the bus nearly there, my friend. Appreciate you've obviously got a little one at home and much more important things than talking NFL. But as you are back, mate, give us your Super Bowl winner, your MVP, and your bold prediction for Sunday.
Yeah, it was nappy change time, so I had to be dealing with more. Actually, no, let's move on. So, I've actually gone for the Chiefs to win this one. I've sort of originally put 35-31 down because I think it's going to be a close but high-scoring game personally. But I just can't look beyond the Chiefs because of how one of the most free-scoring teams I think we've ever known, and able to just flick the switch. And last season, showing that they were in a bit of a hole and they were up against the university and they came through and they've done it once already. So it doesn't matter what position they're in the fourth quarter. Even if they're 10 down, probably even 17 down, I'd still have faith in them being able to do it. Really, to be honest, the usual boring. It'll be Mahomes' MVP because that's just what the league is today. But ultimately, he is the catalyst for that team, and it is going to be a passing game. And I think if it's up to him whether they can win the game, but usually if it's up to him, he wins them the game. And my bold prediction is defensive as well, and it does involve an interception. But my bold prediction is either Tyrann Mathieu or L'Jarius Sneed. Since we talked about them and featured them both earlier, one of them to get a touchdown on an interception. So one of them two to get a pick six. So that's my bold prediction.
Very good, mate. Very good. Liking it. That's one apiece then, fellas, for the Bucks. Get me words out. Lee for the Bucks, James for the Chiefs. Rob, split the tie for us, mate. Where are you going?
Let's go for the Chiefs, 28-24. A tight one. I think it's going to be a really, really good watch. I think it's going to be a tight game. MVP, it's got to be Travis Kelce. Come on. We haven't had a tight end MVP ever. And I think the season he's had and the records that he's set, it's just going to be a special day. 3 touchdowns for Travis Kelce. That's my bold prediction as well.
Nice, mate. Hat trick for Travis. Like it. Very good, mate. Very good. Andy, let's come to you, buddy. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll even it up 2-2. I'll go the Bucks. I'm going to 34-31. I think it's going to be an MVP performance by Devin White back there. Seen he can playmaker on all phases of the game. I reckon he'll go for a forced fumble. I reckon he'll get himself a pick, and I reckon he'll get himself a sack as well. So big performance there. That's not actually my bold prediction though. I reckon Mike Evans is going to get a hat trick. I reckon he might not put up a huge yardage, but I reckon once Brady gets inside that 10-yard line, everything's going to be about Evans going after Sneed or whoever he's matched up against. 6'4" Evans, 6 foot Sneed. Give me that matchup every day of the week if that's the way it lines up. So yeah, Mike Evans going for a big one.
I'll tell you what, boys, we're halfway through, and if Kelsey's getting a hat-trick and Evans is getting a hat-trick and defenders are returning pick sixes, I'm certainly tuning in for this one Sunday night, fellas. It's shaping up to be a belter. Kieran, we're back tied at 2 apiece, mate. Split the tie for me.
Bucks. Brady as MVP or Devon White. Got to show love to the LSU guys who are just destroying the league this year, much to Rob's chagrin, I am sure. I just think the story is too perfect. Patrick Mahomes eats ketchup on his steak. Travis Kelce was on a dating show. Tyreek Hill doesn't have a neck. Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Bucks win. He is going to be MVP again, or, like I said, Devon White, or switched it up a few years ago, Julian Edelman. I mean, Scotty Miller. One of these guys. Just trust me on this. And much to everyone's annoyance, Brady's going to get number 7. He's going to go home to his supermodel wife, kiss his son on the mouth with a little bit too much tongue, and there is nothing you can do to stop it. Most furious 60 seconds since I last had sex with my girlfriend.
I'm really glad you've cooled off in the last half an hour backstage, man. Really glad you've cooled off.
What did you do with the other 45 seconds? Well, we don't need to answer.
We cuddle.
Lawrence, which way are you going, buddy?
Well, just before I say that, can we ensure Kieran is never allowed to drink watermelon Mountain Dew ever again?
It does seem to have been deadly this evening. That's
crazy juice. So I am in what is a majority now. I've got the Buccaneers as well. I've got a 31-28, and my MVP is also a defensive player. And I'm going to take it back to a little bit of naughty by nature, because I'm down with JPP. Yeah, you know me. So I've got Jason Pierre-Paul to have 3 sacks and either 1 or 2 forced fumbles. So that's my bold prediction. And I have put my money where my mouth is, all £3 of it. And I've got 150-1 on JPP as MVP. So there we go. So yeah,
Right.
and the reason for it is it's not a trendy pick. No one's really talked about it. Eric Fisher is out. They've got to bring in somebody else on that offensive line. So, ripe for the picking. So there we go. I'm down with JPP all Sunday night.
Sounds good. Lots of you going defensively here, fellas. Lots going defensively. Tim, are you gonna secure the win for the Bucks, or are you going the Chiefs to make it 4-3?
I mean, what's wrong with everyone in this chat room today? Jesus Christ! Defensive players been in Super Bowl MVPs. What's wrong with you? Look, if you look to the betting. Anyway,
just because the Cowboys don't have a defense doesn't mean.
Hang on, wait. Tony Romo is in his first Super Bowl this Sunday, right? And he's gonna surpass Tom Brady's total appearances come 20 years time, right? That's what I'm saying. We'll come back in 20 years. We're still going. Anyway, Super Bowl. It's really hard to call. My bold prediction is going to be that it goes to overtime. First and foremost, I don't know how bold that is. I don't really have overtime Super Bowls, but there we go. Super Bowl, I think I'm probably going to go Tampa Bay, if I'm honest. MVP is going to be a quarterback, so unfortunately it's just going to be Tom Brady. But the other bold prediction I had as well is that the halftime show the weekend's not actually going to be awful.
That's bold.
I'm pretty sure it will be awful, but anyway, no one's really bothered about that, are they? I'll finish it off then, fellas. I'll make it 5-3. I'm going with the Chiefs. I've been with the Chiefs all year long, as everyone that watches and listens every week knows. Don't see any reason to change it. I think it's going to be a cracking game. You boys have certainly whet my appetite in terms of the preview that we've had. Rob stole my thunder. I was going Travis Kelce as the first tight end MVP for my bold prediction as well. So yeah, I'm just thoroughly looking forward to it. It's been an absolute pleasure, fellas, to have you all on this evening. Hopefully it's not been too clunky for those of you listening and watching along, getting the boys in and out, and hopefully you've caught the attention across the bottom of your screen, if you have been watching along, to all of the stuff we've got coming up this week. For those of you listening audio wise though, here is the plan for the week ahead. Tomorrow, already in the can and will be released, is a podcast recorded by Tim and some fellow UK podcasts, again discussing the big game with some different opinions on all things Sunday. Wednesday is a very special show for us, a super edition of the Full 10 Questions, where there'll be 2 editions of the quiz. Firstly, we'll be getting Hannah Wilkes and Jeff Reinbold from Sky Sports NFL on to test their NFL knowledge. And then we'll be opening it up to everybody on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube to watch along and play along, chance to win some prizes. So a really fun episode on Wednesday for us to look forward to. Thursday and Friday, we'll be getting all your DFS and betting in a bit more focus. So tune in for those. And then on Saturday, as I mentioned earlier, very special interview that we've done with one of the guys that votes on the Hall of Fame, as that ceremony will obviously be taking place on Saturday. So Lawrence has kindly put an interview together for us, and that will be released on the weekend. If that doesn't whet your appetite off the back of what we've gone through tonight, I don't think anything will do, will it? As I said right at the start, it's always the best week of the season and the most bittersweet week of the season. Obviously, the end is in sight, but like I say, it should be a superb game, and hopefully me and the boys have done our job in terms of getting you all excited for it with just a few days to go. Right then, fellas, in unison, as we're all together, as one big family, as we always do, in the great words of Mr. Kevin Cadle, it is, of course, bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Full 10 Yards podcast. Follow us on Facebook or Twitter at Full10Yards or email the show full10yards@gmail.com.